Up your cocks and grab your socks. Get your bunks made and get your uniforms on. Police call will commence in 2 minutes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the morning show. And it is me and Sergeant Freebird. We are here this morning. We got some top news stories to talk about today, and also some new things that have came out of the VA that we just want to make sure that we update and release that information as well. Like I said, this is the morning show, and our whole mission here is to show all of our veterans and our men and women in uniform all over the world that there are more programs out there beyond the VA. My name's H Train, H Train, and with me sitting in is. You go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, my name's Sergeant Major Freebird. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Retired Sergeant Major, proud to be here, proud to help Joel out, and thank you guys for listening.
All right, well, so the first story of today, I don't know if you heard about this, Freebird, but we have a serious issue right now in society where teachers aren't able to go to work and be safe, and considering the pain that they get to deal with stuff like this. A Virginia teacher was shot by a 60-year-old student teacher. She texted a loved one. As soon as that happened, as soon as she saw that the boy was threatening her, the army, and for her to react, it was Abigail Zweier. She texted 1 hour to a loved one before it happened, and the school's representative. You want to
representative?
Help? Yeah, there we go. So the representative basically said because of the situation is still being investigated, but she's going to be suing the school because nobody in that faculty reacted whatsoever, and it was past 5 minutes. I'm sorry, but I get you have security guards and stuff out in front of the door. I'm sure that you have security guards watching film, the front door, the back door, stuff like that, especially if it's a school and not one single person saw this kid armed or anything. So that's the reason why they're going to file a lawsuit. And the updated portion of that I found out this morning is the superintendent has already been moved. So that's that top story. What do you think about that?
So I think it kind of goes. So I think it kind of goes with society, right, Joel? Bad people do not follow rules. That's the unfortunate nature of the beast, right? They don't listen, they don't follow, they don't, again. So rules are there to protect good people, but they do nothing to stop the bad people, right?
True.
The fact of the matter is that every school, I don't know a school in the country right now that does not have a school resource officer, which is either a police officer or a deputy assigned to it, all the way down to the elementary school level. And typically, from what I understand from the area that I live in, is everything gets investigated. If the teacher notified the school and they didn't investigate, then the school is wrong and the school is going to have a huge lawsuit on their hands.
Right.
That's the bottom line. If they can determine that they did nothing to even investigate and then the teacher ends up getting shot, it's just, again, it's not right. Again, do we arm teachers? I don't know. I don't necessarily think that, and I'm just going back to, I took a bunch of friends out shooting on Sunday last week. And I took my son and my dad, and then I took about 5 neighbors that wanted to learn how to shoot. So I took them out. We went shooting. We shot shotguns, we shot pistols, we shot 22s. Didn't break out any of the big boom boom stuff. We had an AR there. They all thought that was cool, right? But at the end of the day, you're talking about people wanting to learn and protect themselves. And that's ultimately what it's going to come down to, right?
Right.
They're going to want to learn and protect themselves. And that's the only way it's going to work, right? Teachers should not have to worry about getting shot when they're at school. All right. It shouldn't be there. But I hate to say it, the average citizen should not have to worry about being shot when they're going to a grocery store either.
That's true. I always had this idea, and I don't know if I'm just nuts or crazy, or if like people just don't.
Maybe both. Maybe both.
But so when I had a truck, I had a bed liner. I don't know if it was Rhino or X. I forget what it was, but it was one of those bed liners that they bragged about. You could blow C4 on it and it wouldn't dent it. It had like a lifetime warranty. It was like Kevlar kind of
bullshit
bed cover. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was my thought, is if we do that, and like you said, it's probably bullshit with the exploding like C4 or whatever on it, but you would think that we could paint that on like the walls of the classroom, kind of like a bed liner, and I mean it might not stop a bullet, but it could definitely maybe help keep these shootings lower. Do you see what I'm saying?
So again, if somebody is able to get a weapon into school, whether it be a knife, axe, a pistol, there is a threat there. A gun of any sort, any type of explosive device, there's a threat, right? So ultimately has to stop upon the entrance. Do you install sniffers in every school that when the kids walk through, it's automatically scanning for any type of residue or any type of, metal devices? Most schools these days, kids got to go through electronic, one of those, like you do when you're going to the airport. You got to go get scanned before on your way into school. All right. Some of them go as far as they have x-ray machines to scan their backpacks. Those aren't 100% foolproof. So I think sniffers is a safer way to go, less invasive too, versus, scanning people all the time. But at the end of the day, it's about teaching, right? Helping folks understand that they don't have again, like a lot of people don't understand what happens when you pull the trigger on a gun. All right. They don't understand that when you take and you shoot a bullet, that you cannot call it back.
Right.
All right. You can't disarm it like a missile, right? It is a very permanent solution to a temporary problem, much like suicide.
Yep.
All right. And unfortunately, again, gun control, it's there, but it's not going to stop bad people.
I agree.
The only thing is to train people, to train them, help them understand this is what's going to happen if you do this. And that's just the bottom line, Joel. That's what we've got to teach folks is when those guys, when I took them out shooting this weekend and they sat there and they took a 12 gauge shotgun filled with 4-shot and they saw the hole it made in the target, the cardboard target, an inanimate object, a piece of paper that was a living tree at one time.
Right.
And when they saw that, they're like, holy smokes. And because I tell folks, I was like, if somebody comes to my house, I was like, I'm not grabbing my pistol, I'm grabbing my shotgun. Right. There's different actions that maybe might scare an intruder. Because ultimately I'm going to use as minimal force as possible. But if you come in my house and you pose a threat, then I'm going to kill you. And that's just the bottom line.
And it's funny that you bring that up because also in the story, uh, two children are dead, mother and infant hospitalized after a failed suicide attempt. No further info on this story until after the investigation. The reason why we bring this up is we want everybody to remember that crisis hotline 988. So it's just amazing the stuff that's happening with weapons here lately. If it's not like police brutality, if it's not suicides, if it's not school shootings, it's like, gosh,
So, so let me ask you this, Joel.
yeah.
What's happening more of today that helps bring more attention to it?
I would say mental health.
Okay. So I'm going to take a different twist on this, Joel.
Okay.
I'm talking about the publicity that we bring to it. Shootings happen every day. But guess what? Right now it's being ostracized and it's being blown up on because Americans are getting tired of it, right? What are we going to do to protect our families? What are we doing to protect our children? What are we doing just to protect society in general? Instead, right? Like make gun control, make the implementation and put it in place where it makes it tougher for folks to get a weapon. How about that?
I agree with that. At one time, I felt that kind of like have to have a driver's license to be able to drive. I felt at one time that you should have a license to just be able to utilize a weapon. But it's just one more thing for the government to tax you on if you do something like that. And
well,
you don't even.
We already pay enough. We already pay enough taxes on firearms, right?
Right.
When you look at what hunters supply to our economy, whether it's your clothing, whether it's the scent control, whether it's your bow and arrow, whether it's your firearm, whether it's the ammo, we're taxed. All right. Then let's even talk about buying a hunting license. Okay. And how we're making that unaffordable for most people now.
And
just to be able to go out and harvest an animal and get your own groceries. Instead we're working opposite. We make fast food cheaper and convenient. We make food that's healthy for you. All right. Overprice it. Because of all the inflation in the economy, the average American probably can't afford to buy a whole lot of meat at one time. So make hunting an option, a viable option. Well, now, am I for somebody that doesn't know how to use a gun or a bow or a weapon to go out and try to harvest an animal? No, I'm not. But there's plenty of people out there like myself that will teach somebody. Goes back to that whole thing. Excuse me. You catch a fish, the guy eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime.
Right.
Same thing with hunting, right? If you give somebody meat, they eat for that day or they eat for a week, great. But if you teach them how to hunt and go harvest their own animal, and there's food banks, mind you, all over the country where people harvest animals and they go and donate the food and then the food gets distributed to needy families, but let's look at it from that perspective, right? And then of course we get back into the gun control issue. How do we stop this? How do we prevent suicide? If somebody wants to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves. All right. Look at Joe Cap. Joe to highlight that.
Oh yeah.
And I still don't know if that is confirmed or not, but you're talking about a guy that was wounded, and Joseph Kapowitsky, a Ranger guy, was wounded in 2005 in northern Iraq, lost his leg. All right. The guy fought back, stayed in service with the prosthetic limb, went back through RAS, Ranger Assessment Selection Process, All right, but it's called RAS now, Ranger Assessment and Selection. Made it through RAS, and then got assigned back to Ranger Regiment and was out conducting combat operations with the prosthetic limb. Serves his 20 years and retires. And then at 40, he's, just up and dies. Or, maybe he took his own life. That's to be debated. But, this is somebody that was the tip of the spear, right?
Right.
All right. Remove the stigmatism that getting help shows a sign of weakness.
Right.
Go talk to people. Call your Army buddies. Buddies reach out to buddies. Don't isolate themselves because right? We all know when you call a friend and you say, hey, man, how you doing? And they say, okay, don't hang up the phone. Talk to them. They're not okay. Something's wrong. They need help. And it's on us to get help, right?
Yeah.
Right? Remember ACE, Ask, Care, Escort, right? And it's hard, right? Because we're all across the country, some of us globally. And
some
we just got to
like slammed. Like,
yeah, just life in general, or life in general happens, right? Everybody has stuff going on.
Right. Some
Everybody.
People, you don't know what their situation is. They might have like 3 jobs that they're working just to make like the rent. So,
yeah,
if they're like calling you, I mean, like literally that costs them time for them to, either sleep, eat, or, work or do anything. And I think some people fail to realize that. I know that I do sometimes. So
yeah. And it's hard, right? Because we all got our own life going on.
Yeah.
Some of us have children that we take care of us. Some of us have pets that require our attention. And it's a lot, man. It's just a lot. So that's where I tell my kids, just be kind to kids, right? Don't be mean. Don't be a bully. You don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know what they have going on in their personal life, right? Because we only let you know what we want you to know, right?
Right.
And that's just the way it works. That's just the way it works.
Exactly. And when I remember talking to you, I think it was either yesterday, because this is the bad thing, and I got to do more research on it. But so the gentleman, he gave me a book that he wrote, he signed it and stuff, but I never like really got to know him, and I hadn't read it yet because of my vision and stuff. But when I was asking you about him, you was telling me that did you serve with him, or was you at that incident that happened?
Yeah, no, when he was wounded in 2005, I was in northern Iraq when it happened. I remember when he came in.
Okay.
I met his wife when I was at the AWG. He was at Walter Reed still undergoing surgeries. And I met his wife there because Colonel Shaw and we went and visited him. But, the guy was bigger in life. He was hell-bent on coming back in the Army. And he just, like, if you knew him, he just was that person, right? So, was I close friends with him? No, could I have called? Yeah. Could I have reached out? Are you all right? Sure.
Right.
But you don't know, right? You don't know.
Right.
And being somebody that was going to take his life at one point, again, I had my plan figured out. I had my letter written. I had everything done. I had all my boxes checked. I knew the date, the time I was going to do it. And if it wouldn't be for some very good, close friends, I wouldn't be here today, Joel. I wouldn't, because we all have demons. We can't erase what we've been through, what we've experienced, going all the way back. I look at the things that I've done since 2000 or since 1996, and there's just things that you would never ask anybody to do. Right. I still remember being in Bosnia in 97 and that little boy got blown up, taking us to a minefield when I was with 82nd. And, it does something to you when you have a child die in your arms, and there's nothing he could do. Nothing he could do. He was walking us to the minefield, stepped on a Prom-2 landmine, right? Everybody else pro back. I went forward. I grabbed him. He's bleeding to death. There's nothing I could do. If I would have stepped on that Prom-2 landmine, I would have lost a leg. I would have lived. I would have survived. All right. But you're talking about a 7-year-old little boy that lost almost most of his lower extremities, and it just devastating to him.
Right.
Right.
John, hold that moment. We are going to go on a music break. And when we come back from that music break, we'll be talking with, I should have looked this up. We'll be talking to Farron Dozer, retired. We'll be talking with him about his veteran suicide and Rhabdomyolitis. I can't pronounce it, but we're going to be talking about his organization and what he does. So, whatever you do, stay with us. Don't go away. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to MVR, giving veterans a voice. All right, and we are back, and once again, you're listening to the morning show right here on Military Broadcast Radio, which before we go into like the next segment, before we get to the interview, we have to let you know that if you're watching this and you want to do this, if you want to have a show or a podcast, this is what we do. We give veterans a voice. We give them the opportunity just to be heard, just to, I love it because it's like rehabilitation. The music is for the soul, and like the show prepping and setting everything up, putting everything together, it keeps you busy.
Yeah.
So, but going into the next segment, what is your story that you wanted to cover today?
So I'm a diehard Packer fan.
Right.
I'm a diehard Packer fan. And I love how Aaron Rodgers is dominating the headlines already. The season just ended. All right. And we got knocked out by the Detroit Lions because we played like a poop emoji. And to me, it's logical. Aaron's movement, right? It makes sense. It makes sense to the organization. It makes sense to business. They got to release him sooner than later, because if you think about it, the organization are just going to have to pay him $59.5 million to play football in 2023.
Right.
$59.5 million. All right. If they release him before a certain time, it's only $40 million. I apologize.
That's okay. It looks like you're catching a cold.
No, not at all, man. I don't get sick. I don't allow it. I've had every gosh damn anthrax shot known to man. All right. If something comes in my body, it wants out as soon as it gets in.
Right. I think I have that same issue. God, I don't even know how many anthrax shots I had. All right. So, I was talking about this, I think last week or the week before, that, some of the off-season quarterback controversial moves that they're making is definitely going to be like a headliner. Like, what is Aaron Rodgers going to do? Just like he was talking about. What is Tom Brady going to do? I know that the last thing that I've heard is it's going to be between the Miami Dolphins and the is it Los Angeles still? Or
Yeah,
no,
or no, it's the Las Vegas
Vegas.
Raiders. So you're talking about Brady right now?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, I think, can go anywhere. So, he'll be in that. Who's going to want to pay him his salary, for the
You
year?
know, I don't know if that's going to happen or not because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is ready to retire.
He's not going to retire. He's
No.
going to play football somewhere in 2023. I just do not think it will be with the Green Bay Packers. All right. And that's just that. I'm sorry. It just makes good business sense.
Yeah, right.
It does. It just makes it's the right answer. The Packers got to release him. They got a viable backup in Jordan Love, right? And he'll do great. He'll do great. He's already shown that he can run the offense.
So so this is what I don't understand. Break it down to me, Barney style.
So if you cut out $58.3 million, do you know what that allows you to do?
Well, so he re-signed last.
He got a better contract, right?
Right, and it wasn't that contract 2 years. So how is he a free agent?
So the Packers, in that clause, the Packers have the ability to release him at any point, and Aaron has the ability to request a trade.
Okay.
All right. Aaron didn't have the best season because if you watched earlier in the season, they were still like the energy was not there. Again, you got to look at who moved on from the receiving corps: Valdez-Scantling, Devontae Adams.
Yeah, he went
two powerhouses that made Aaron successful. Right. And I think they lost an offensive lineman too. And again, like Aaron, he's still agile, but he's not going to hurt you like a Jalen Hurts or Ezekiel, not Ezekiel Elliott, but what's the other turd bucket down there in the Cowboys? Dak Prescott.
Yes.
Where they're still mobile enough and agile enough, they could put, they'll put a 25-yard rush out there. So
I agree. And it's funny that you bring that up because I saw that in the news also about basically Jerry Jones throwing most of the team under the bus, especially Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Like right now, I feel
he's
bad.
Another one that's going to possibly be available, right?
Possibly, yeah. And with the trolling and stuff, I really feel bad for him and that Megan Hall, that I guess the Virginia, or I don't know what kind of, I think it was maybe Nevada, but
no, I think you're right.
She was a police officer that got in trouble for basically having an open relationship with most of the people on the work shift or whatever. Which
that's a nice way to put it.
Well, I was trying to keep it somewhat, G-rated, and I just feel bad for them, because they made a mistake, and now they're getting trolling. I'm glad I made my mistakes before the internet.
Yeah, so she had oh gosh, Joel, you know as well as I do the things that we did when we were growing up as young soldiers. We'd be in jail still to this day.
Oh my God.
So you're talking about the woman, the Tennessee cop, Megan Hall, or basically says her husband's standing by her trying to salvage their relationship as she shrugs off. She had sex with 6 colleagues at work. All right, 6 male officers. Man, I wonder if they were all single or married. That makes me nervous. She performed oral sex on colleagues while on duty, had affairs, and proposed threesomes with another officer and his wife, and whipped off for bikini top at Girls Gone Wild hot tub party. So you're talking about somebody that is adventurous.
Yeah.
Maybe she's, again, I'm not judging. If her husband wants to stand by her, I'm proud of him. That's great. That's
Right.
awesome. Most relationships will not sustain that.
Well, I'll tell you. There's two reasons why somebody would stay with somebody that's in this kind of trouble. Okay, number one, either financial stability. Like, hey, I would divorce, but hell, I'm not going to live with my mom, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because if you get a divorce, you're going to have to like divide the house and all that stuff. And people sometimes they would rather live through shit than deal with shit, if that makes sense. Or
Yeah.
the second option is quite possibly he's done it himself, but he just hasn't got caught. So he's just like, I don't know the guy, but I'm starting when I'm going through life. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm starting to look at people's different perspectives. Like, what would happen if you was in their shoes? Why would you do that? A long time ago, I had dated a woman in a wheelchair, and I judged people beyond on if they were married to somebody and that person became disabled and they got a divorce. I would
Yeah.
always judge that person because why did you leave them? Blah blah blah. And I was in that kind of a relationship, going out, whatever. So I saw the reason why like the divorces and stuff like that happen. Do you find yourself looking at different opinions as well?
So again, you don't know circumstances.
Right.
I always told when I was married, I always told my wife that, and yes, I am single. So if there's any available ladies out there, hit me up. Um, but I always told my wife I would want her to be happy, right? She doesn't have to stick by me and take care of me. She doesn't have to, look after me. I would want her to go and live as much a normal life as possible. As noble as that is, as bad as that is, you don't know. Like, again, it's everybody has their own story, everybody has their own reason, and we don't know. We really truly don't know what is going on inside their relationship, inside with them, as well as you think of the emotional toll it takes on someone when you do lose a limb.
Right.
Having a few battle buddies and whatnot, you're a different person. Some people don't recover from that. All right. Because they look like I'm handicapped. I'm worthless. I'm good for nothing. When it's absolutely not the case, right? Like, I got it. Like, we've got brothers and sisters out there that have lost limbs, and they have, I'm not going to say capitalized on it, but it has created different opportunities for them now to go forward and succeed. Right.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, you can't change it. You can't reverse it. You can't go back and get your limb back. Yeah, it's hard. It's, I'm not, I typically, I do my best not to judge anyone, Joel, because I'm not in their shoes. All right. So, so if somebody leaves somebody because they lost a limb, you got to ask yourself, wow, did you really love that person in the first place? But
Right.
you also don't know what's going on there, right? There could be a number of different things. If somebody lost their penis, all right, or couldn't have sex, there's other ways around that, right?
Right.
So give me a prosthetic, I'll take it.
Right.
I'm kind of fond of my penis, but At the end of the day, it's if I lost my penis, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Right? I'm sure it would be a tough battle.
We would adapt. The good thing about the military is you learn how to adapt. You learn how to
improvise, adapt, overcome, survive, live to fight another day.
Yep, exactly. But I find the judging thing as I get older, I find I do that less.
Well, we become thoroughly
experience.
As we get older, I think we just become thoroughly unimpressed with different things. We have our values, we have our opinions, they're ours. That's right. Guess what? That's what you and I both supported and defended.
Right.
It's about respecting other people's opinions and other people's stuff. Let their actions speak for themselves. Okay. This Megan Hall had an open relationship with her husband. So she probably didn't think she was doing anything wrong because she's kind of got a free pass to do what she wants to do. I mean, from reading this article here from the UK, she invited her husband to join them. So I'm just thinking Megan Hall's a freak.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. Yeah, and she probably doesn't think that she did anything wrong because she was like, I wasn't on the clock or anything like that.
Well, no, it says that she was on shift when she did perform some of her actions.
Oh, wow.
Which is wrong, right? Like, again, you know how it was. Like, you imagine if we were on guard duty with a female and got caught having sex while we were on guard duty, dude,
yeah.
Like, we'd be automatic Article 15.
True that. That's exactly the truth, too.
That is exactly the truth, right? Like, so again, it's like you looked at you brothers and sisters. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're deployed. But, things happen when you're deployed. You and I both know this.
Yes. Yeah.
And it helped me to formulate opinions about some people that that did do things with soldiers and subordinates and sometimes superiors while they were deployed. And they were married.
Yeah.
And so that's just, again, it's just, I'm not going to say it's a norm, but you have a bunch of,
it happens.
And I'll say, I'll refer to it like this: lions, right? You have a bunch of lions that are out doing their nation's business. And if an opportunity presents itself, the lion's going to kill something. In this instance here, we're referring to that kill as being, okay, I'm going to have sex if an opportunity presents itself. Not everybody, but some will, whether they're married or not. I don't know if that goes back to some of our Viking heritage or whatnot. Vikings kind of just did whatever they wanted to do whenever they wanted to do it. They didn't ask for permission. They just did it.
Yeah, true story. True story. It's a
touchy subject, right?
Yeah.
It is, because, everybody's got an opinion about things.
Yeah.
Again, we aren't out there defending our nation and getting paid by our nation to go have sex while we're out doing what they need us to do.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. It is the interview of the week, and today joining us, we have, we have Mr. Dozer, but I'm going to have you introduce yourself and explain what you do. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dozer joins us today. Thank you for joining us.
How you doing this morning? How everybody?
Hey, thank you, Mr. Dozer. Doing great. Yourself? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. No complaints.
You good?
Yeah.
You sitting there laughing at us from what we were talking about before?
Yeah, I caught that tail end of that. Yeah.
He's like, what am I walking into?
Yeah, but thank you. My name is Farhan Dozier. I'm a retired Army Sergeant First Class. Almost a quarter of a century in the Army, and that same time been advocating for sickle cell trait awareness and veteran suicide.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you.
And second of all, tell us a little bit about this nonprofit that you volunteer, that you run. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was medically retired in about 10 years ago now from a condition called sickle cell trait exertion with rhabdomyolysis. So I was at my Master Sergeant Academy working on my E8 rank, and after the APFT, I collapsed. They rushed me to the hospital. The doctor pulled me in, gave me an IV, came back and asked me if I ever had kidney problems. I'm like, no. He says, what do you do now? And then he walks out. He comes back in and says, you know what? It's a freak accident. You're probably dehydrated. So I'm going to give you another IV. Go back to the barracks. Take the rest of the day off. You should be fine. So I'm like, okay, cool. But my condition was worse. I started throwing up, almost crapped on myself, like I was in a very bad state. Of course, it was about 16:30 because my classmates came back into the barracks. They rushed me back to the hospital. The night doctor did some more blood work, and he found that my creatinine kinase levels, CK levels, were like 12,000 and rising. At the time, I was 36, so they should have been about 150. So what they diagnosed me was a condition called rhabdomyolysis, which is a skeletal muscular disorder, that if you overexert yourself, that the myoglobin in the muscles can leak into the bloodstream, and then it releases toxins. And so when those toxins hit the bloodstream, it hits the kidneys. The kidneys can't filter all those toxins. So that's what the morning doctor saw, was the renal failure, right? And so didn't know that, all that was happening until that night. And then they just put me on IVs for 4 days to flush my kidneys and to bring those CK levels down. I was unable to finish that course, so I didn't complete the Master Sergeant Academy. I went back home.
Were you in El Paso?
No, I was at a place called Camp Roberts because I was a mechanic at the time. So the RTSM, they did all the courses there. So sent me back home, went to the doctor. He kind of monitored my CK levels. They went down to like the 500s. But every time I tried to figure out if I could exercise again, it was like I'd been on a roller coaster ride afterwards. Like I was dealing with vertigo and just kind of in a bad state. So about 2.5 years, 3 years of that, we just decided that you can't run anymore. So I'm like, cool. I've seen people with worse conditions, so I'll just, do the walk or the bicycle or something. So I turned that paperwork into the state surgeon's office, and they was like, oh, now this is almost 3 years later. They're like, oh, you can't do anything. You can't even carry a weapon until we figure out, what happened to you. I'm like, that was 3 years. 3 years ago. I'm good. They're like, no. So they put me on a P4 profile in 2009. And then all of a sudden after that, I couldn't exercise anymore. I couldn't do anything. And my body just started breaking down. My knees started hurting, my lower back, my arms, my shoulders. And next thing you know, within that 2010 January, my whole body was inflamed. I was stiff as a table. I could barely walk. And so I was connected to an Air Force base, the LA Air Force Base. And so I would go there to sick call like every 2 days to say, hey, look, something's going on. So the nurse was like, after about 2 weeks of that, she was like, I don't know what to do. Like, we don't know what's going on. So you should go to UCLA Medical Center because they have specialists there. And so on the 28th of January, I went to UCLA Medical Center, drove myself to the emergency room. They rushed me in the back. My heart was doing some crazy stuff. And she says, oh, they checked me in. They put this needle in my knee and pulled out fluid. And she's like, oh, you have arthritis. And I'm like, what? So now I'm dealing with the physical pain. And then I'm also now dealing with mental pain because, I don't know what's going on. My body's shutting down. So they send me to these mental health appointments and things like that. And so the mental health provider that I was seeing, he says, well, what are you going to do when you retire? I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm like, my life is over. Like, I'm done. I don't know what. And so he's like, read this pamphlet. And he showed me that in college, that athletes have been collapsing and dying from a thing called exertional sickling with rhabdo. And so I read that and I'm like, you know what happened to me? He's like, oh yeah, it happens a lot. But people either get misdiagnosed or they die. And so there's, they die from the heart attack. So they don't consider it, the sickle cell trait. And so I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So I think I have sickle cell trait. So when I did more research, I discovered that in 1999, I did my second physical. I was transferring to Michigan to the 125 Infantry to be a supply sergeant. And the Air Force base that I was connected to did that physical, and they found my sickle cell trait. Well, I was already in 10 years. And so the doctor's like, do you know you have sickle cell trait? I'm like, no. Okay, well, we just want to let you know. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got to have a cousin with sickle cell disease. He said, no, it's not sickle cell disease. You're just a carrier. Okay, cool. So I go about my life. And then that's 99. And then I collapsed in 2006. And then in 2010, I hear this sickle cell trait conversation. And then I find my medical paperwork. And sure enough, there was a positive sickle cell trait test on my physical. And then I took that to the UCLA Medical Center because they were treating me for arthritis. And she retested my blood again, and sure enough, positive sickle cell trait. And then that's when we figured out that the rhabdo and the trait combined, we found in military in different branches that people have died and also collapsed. And so in the midst of all that and wanting to take my life and dealing with depression and anxiety, this little light bulb came on and said, you actually have a voice in that. And so I started doing research. And so while I was still serving, I started speaking about sickle cell trait at different locations. And when I got out, I started a small nonprofit where I could at least go out and speak to bases and people could donate if they wanted to. So that's what I've been doing the last 10 years since I've been out. And I've been going back to the base that I collapsed. So I called the base like, hey, do you guys allow guest speakers? And they're like, let us check. So Camp Roberts, they went and they approved it. So I've been going back for about 6-7 years now to every class that comes in. I do a presentation on their orientation day to give them information about sickle cell trait, share my story because I was there. That was the base I was on. So I've been doing that, and that really has kept me alive. That really has gave me another purpose of what's next. And so I've just been trying to maintain, my sanity with that. And so the Army has now, in 2020, they started retesting their soldiers for sickle cell trait now. So now the last year I've been going to the base and soldiers are coming saying, hey, I just found out I have that, and so they really don't know about it. So it's like a perfect match because they're still not getting the education about, okay, yeah, you're getting tested for it, but they're not explaining to you, why, how it affects the body, the risk factors, like none of that. So I still see I have a place for that, so that keeps me going.
That sounds fantastic. I love that. It's amazing what you learn about medical stuff when you have no idea, like what you're doing, or, I don't know how to
I know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Freebird?
I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this. So I Googled you real quick, bud. And It's awesome. And, I see what you're doing. You're being an advocate. You're being out there. And then I'm noticing What's the Count? Is that your nonprofit that you run?
Yeah. So in 97, I was at my grandparents' house and I love the Latin culture. Right. And so I played basketball. So if you walk into a gym, you say, hey, what's the count? It's like a term of saying, what's the score? And so I believe God gave me that. And because it's like a question, I remember that the Hispanic community, they write their questions with the upside down question mark first, right? And then que pasa or whatever, and then the right side up question mark. So I had my cousin draw these two question marks and put what's the count on it. And I just put it away in my Bible. Like I just put it away in 97. And then when the mental health provider asked me about retirement, I'm like, well, I have this idea of selling hats and T-shirts. So I have this idea called What's the Count? And so when I actually started the nonprofit work, I took the initials of What's the Count and made it WDC, which is What's the Count, but I added the sickle cell trait prevention. So my ultimate goal is to have that sports brand fund my nonprofit, because it's challenging to get grants, man. Like I function at a very minimal amount, and so my goal is to figure out how I can launch that sports brand so I could pay for my own travels, because I have a military tour that I do, and so it costs about 12. Go ahead.
No. Do you have you been able to get in touch with any type of professional organizations to where you could work with this?
I'm looking, because I feel like sometimes I don't even need a nonprofit. Like if somebody wanted to take on my military tour, they could take on the administrative part and just give me the funds that I need to go and speak, because I just want to do the work. I was a sergeant first class. I'm NCO, so I just want to do the work. But I've been maintaining it myself with small donations. But yeah, I'm at this stage after being in it for 10 years. I can travel to California. So I have Camp Roberts. I made contact with the March Air Force Base and Los Alamitos, because that's where they host their RS programs, where the new recruits come in. So I've been able to speak with the new recruits, so I can expand this conversation in California to travel to different bases. So I would love
and I'm thinking of all the big locations. Like you think of Benny,
exactly,
you think of Fort Leonard
Wood. Exactly.
And I see a benefit. I see a benefit of bringing awareness. It's also too, how do we market the brand, right? Like how do we, because I'm seeing flat brim caps. I'm seeing an NFL player walking into the locker room and somebody asking a question. And you think of basketball. So if basketball is your passion, there's got to be somebody out there that could easily.
The sports brand covers, because athletics, so it covers all sports. So I have logos for all different sports, from hockey to handball, because I see that athletes, those are people.
Okay, so do you know the number of people this affects? Like on I'm going to ask you for, because everybody wants the qualitative.
Yeah,
data,
you're
right?
ready. You're ready.
I'm ready.
So 300 million people globally plus have sickle cell trait. In the United States, they say between 2.5 to 4 million people have sickle cell trait, and still millions don't know.
How do we? I mean, I will not sit there and BS you. But when you said I thought you were cussing at me when you were first talking about it. So I was like, for me, I was like, what is it? So I had to go Google, and you think about it, especially in terms of soldiers and how they operate at such a high op tempo. If we could get the military to back this, because you think of all the things that we spearhead, whether it's gender equality, EO, the military serves, and you watch how what we do, some of the initiatives we do, how it trickles down 4 and 5 years later to the civilian side of things. And so when you look at this, I see how this could play out. Like in my brain, I could see how this could play out. I think we got to get you on Shark Tank or something, man. Come on.
I don't know, man. I'm just looking for an organization that believes in this conversation. I've been sharing it. I go to high schools, I go to churches, I go to colleges, I go to health fairs, and everybody says, man, you should be in the school. You should be doing this. I'm like,
and I wonder how many people don't know they're affected by this.
Oh, like I said, there are millions plus that still don't know, that either know that they have the trait, but they're not aware of the risk factors. And the sickle cell trait exertion is a risk factor.
Man, it's crazy.
Yeah. I know a lot of nonprofits that help veterans that are speakers or that are motivation speakers, or because you're kind of a motivation plus teacher
Yes,
speaker,
thank you.
And when we get done with this interview, I'll send you some of those names. But like, Freeman, there was times where I spoke to another veteran that was an inspirational speaker, and he got paid like $5,000 to speak, and I'm like, geez, I do it as long as they cover my hotel.
That's what I want. I'm like, you ain't. I'm medical retired. I don't need any money, but I would wherever if they.
Hey, boss, you live in California. You need money.
Yeah,
you need money. You need money. So you live in California. You need money.
But I would if they cover the expenses, man. That would be more than enough, because it would cover the gas, the travel, the hotel, the rental car, the food. Like that's what I do now at a small level to go to Camp Roberts. I live 4 hours away from Camp Roberts, so I get a rental car. I drive up there, spend the night. I get up. I speak for maybe like an hour, and then I drive back.
Hey, Joe,
it's that important.
Joe, Camp Roberts is in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Middle of wine country, California.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like backed up against like a mountain, which makes no sense to me because it's where they control satellite communications. It's like it. I'm like, how is this possible? Right?
Yeah.
Like, it is literally in the middle of nowhere.
Fort Hunter Liggett and Camp Roberts is right up there. Together.
Yep, right together.
So before we let you go, I want to share some knowledge that maybe I might be able to help you with. When I tell you that, there's a lot of nonprofits out there. It's kind of like taking the bull by the horn kind of approach.
Yeah.
If I was you, and I think Freeman would join me in this thinking little episode that I have. But what I would do if I was you, I would go around to like not only your local, but I would go around your regional, like your VA that you work with. Maybe there's like a mom and pop shop that you go to every morning. I would tell them, hey, I would love to have you guys sponsor a donut like morning, not like a morning show, but I would like you to tell everybody about me. I want to speak for 15, 20 minutes, kind of thing. And I would do that to all your different, like Rotary Club, Dunkin' Donuts, stuff like that. I would start small, and then when you start catching the buzz, instead of you reaching out to a nonprofit to help you, fill those slides, those slots, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're just getting a smaller crowd, if you know what I mean.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah,
and I totally agree. And so there are moments in time that I have that confidence and courage, and then there are moments that my mind says nobody cares about that. Like, why would you want to do that? So I deal with that because after being 24 years in the service, and now that's like an entrepreneur. This is that entrepreneur life now. It's like that's foreign to me, and so I lack a level of, and I'm working on that. Is a lack of confidence. I believe is courage, because there are days that I just like nobody cares. Nobody cares. And then I see someone dies, and then it's like this whole. So I don't know if you're familiar with Ronnie Hillman, who played for the Denver Broncos. He just passed away.
Right.
So Ronnie Hillman had sickle cell trait, and he experienced he died from a rare kidney cancer that's caused by sickle cell trait.
Hey, so Joel, you got some links to the Broncos, right?
I do.
Boss,
I do.
Let him get I'm going to tell you something that a wise old living Delta Force legend told me once.
Okay.
All right. I won't say his name. All right. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
If you are passionate enough for this, if you want to make this thing go global, hold on.
Yeah.
Because hold on. And I'm telling you, it's about you. But
Yeah.
be comfortable being uncomfortable, especially something as serious as this and how it's impacted the NFL, how it's impacting people globally, 300 million people globally.
Yeah.
Now, Grant, I know that's chump change when you talk about how large our population is in the world, but that's a fraction that ultimately about if we can educate people on and help bring awareness to this, maybe it's something that we can help prevent. Or maybe you say, even if you save one life, that's enough, right?
It's again, because of sickle cell trait, the biggest conversation is make sure you don't mate with another person with sickle cell trait because you can have a child with sickle cell disease. Well, with sickle cell disease, there's no cure. There's no universal cure for sickle cell disease. So that's like the parent, conversation, relationship, marriage counseling conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then you have all, like I said, the risk factors of the exertion, the kidney cancer, the blood clots. Like there's a lot of risk factors, and as African Americans, we are number one. But today you're blended, so you could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, Asian descent. So now you have to understand where your bloodline is from, not your skin color. So
Right.
it's been talked about. Oh, that's a black gene. No, it's not. It is a inherited gene based off your bloodline because it combats malaria. So that's why the African culture is high populated with it because of malaria was present. So that's how they survive malaria. But I'm gonna tell you this. No, yeah. So I'm gonna tell you this though. There are other red blood cell conditions. So if I have sickle cell trait and my mate, she has thalassemia trait or C trait or D trait, that child
gets further complicated.
That child can be born if that parent passes the sickle cell trait and the other parent passes the C trait. That child is born with sickle cell SC disease. So there are other red blood cell conditions that people have to be aware of, not just sickle cell trait, because they can also cause health complications as well. So
Holy smokes.
It's serious. Yeah, it's really serious.
Yes, Freeman.
You got to do it.
Yep. Hey,
come on. Get ready.
So we're getting ready for our last question of the time of shine, but I wanted to tell you before we hit it, I wanted you to know that when we get done with this conversation backstage or whatever, I will help you. I think what you need is just direction. I think that's all that you need, because I've talked about it before. In the military, you're kind of told what to do,
exactly,
yes, and when to do it, and that's what MBR is all about. And this is the last question.
Okay.
We call it your time to shine. Whatever we may have missed that you want to make sure that you during this interview, this is your time. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's your time to shine.
This is your time to shine, baby. It's your time to shine.
Yes, I'm on a boy band on the weekends. Sometimes John helps me, and that's the reason why he's on the road. So, with that being said,
okay.
First of all, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. It's been a great eye-opening interviewing, especially when you brought up Ronnie Hillman, because he was one of the Broncos. We have every August we have a Denver Broncos like meet and greet.
Really?
With the meeting with the veterans and stuff, and him and Demetrius Thomas, they were always one of the first ones to come and sign all the military personnel gear and stuff.
So August, Sickle Cell Trait Awareness Month is September. I was able to go to my mayor and have August Sickle Cell Trait Prevention Month in my city. So August is significant for me and my community here because
you live in Redlands, California, right?
In Fontana, yeah, but
Yep.
in Fontana, yeah. The office is
Yep.
in Redlands, yeah.
Yep. I've been to Redlands. There's nothing there. There's not even a hotel there. There's not even a hotel there.
You
They
know,
got a hospital there, but they don't have a hotel there.
yeah.
So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful area.
Yeah, definitely. I like those kind of areas that there's nothing around, as you can tell.
I'm telling you right now, man. You and I are two peas in a pod.
But what I want to leave you with is that's the veteran suicide piece, and this is something that's near and dear because I was at that point where I was just ready to drive my car off the freeway because what I discovered so far was that when I got that medical board information, I made it mean my life was over. And I learned about this thing called the vicious circle. So the military said, your career's coming to an end. I made it mean my life is over. And when those two worlds collapse, everything that happened to me from that moment on, my mind was just looking for the proof that your life is over. My marriage fell apart. My car broke down. Whatever happened to me, it was like, oh yeah, my life is over. And someone introduced me to a personal development education. And I sat in that course and I started to listen to what the coach was sharing with the different principles. And I started putting my life in those conversations. And I discovered that I made that mean my life was over. And when I unraveled that part just enough, I could see that I made up a lot of stories that wasn't true, like the brain. So when you understand how the subconscious mind, it protects us and keeps us safe. So I did all that work. And then I met a Korean era veteran who has education, and we started talking, and you would understand that there's a conversation we call objectification, right? And when you objectify another person, you label that person and it desensitizes you from that human connection. In the military, we do it well. They take our malleable brains, they teach us, they train us how to turn that human being into a terrorist, and now we can kill that terrorist. But one day that brain's going to remember that that's a human being, and then you got to live with that. And so now we're discovering that objectification, we need that as a survival skill to survive, to stay alive, but out of context, it is also destroying our society. Because if you look at football fans, you put a Laker jersey and a Clipper jersey on, they will kill each other in the parking lot because of a team jersey.
That's true.
That's the power. So now when you start talking about I'm black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're this, now you talk to that person as what the world says about that person in that color or that whatever that description is. So we're out to help veterans figure out that what's next, because once you recognize that you're objectifying another person, you can free yourself from that, because that's where that human connection is at. And so what I found for myself in using that principle is where it shows up in the world all over the place. And so to be able to manage that conversation with relationships with people, we say we want to be united, but our language separates us.
Right?
And so even when you say homeless veterans, we're still objectifying that human being to a homeless person, and then you treat that person as such, and it's disconnecting us as people. And we feel that we can have a conversation early on so that people have that level of self-reliance, how to talk to people, listen without defending, just things like that he has as principles that we can help maybe start to heal our society. Even as police officers, you look at how they're trained to objectify you as a suspect, right? But now that community person is objectifying you as a police officer. So you're not even a person, you're a police officer. You should know better because you're a police officer, but we're human beings first. And we don't treat each other as human beings first. We treat each other like we're objects. And so we're disconnected as people. And we believe that is a conversation that if we really had in society, that people start to discover that how you talk to people, we really have love for one another, but the disappointment, the hurt, all the past issues, all the past, I don't like slavery conversations, but when you talk about slavery and all that, it just takes you down that whole rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, we're people. And how do we connect people back to being, and the Bible says, love your neighbor with the same measure that you love yourself. But if I don't love myself, then how am I going to love you?
And I think that strikes a nerve right there, right? Because I think when veterans start to realize what they've done in their past, and this is something that I can personally like work through with pastors, with therapists, with doctors, you know, when you realize what you've done, and you at the time you don't realize it, right? Right. We've got purpose, we've got direction, we've got motivation. Hey,
and you train for that. You train for that from day one.
That's what we do. But for me, it's like I cannot change the past, right? The only thing I can do is change the future. And so we've got to remember the human factor. Like I watch kids today, and I see it a lot at my son's high school. They play too much. They play too much. And I'm like, dude, be nice.
Yes.
Like that's where it starts, right there.
Yes, right there.
And the next you know, somebody gets mad.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, then that's how it starts.
Yeah.
So education. Listen, guys, you can be too friendly. Don't get comfortable.
Yes.
Be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Like not afraid, but just be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Because
there's always
something.
It does.
It takes something. And so what you're saying is exactly right, because what he discovered is if you catch it, the transition from elementary to middle school is huge, because by the time you're at middle school, you've already broken communication with your parents, because if you have both, even if you have both parents, that child is going to disconnect from that dad and that mom, because that dad might do something and that might disappoint that child. And now, oh, my dad doesn't love me and my mom abandoned me. So now you're going to turn to your peers, and that's all trial and error. Everybody's trying to figure out, you know, and if you don't have your identity or who you are as a person, and most like athletes, then you're susceptible to what? To gangs, to predators, you know, to whatever, because
somebody is there, it's waiting.
The sense of belonging. That's what we look. Even as veterans, I remember being taught, hey, civilians are not going to understand you. Civilians are not going to understand you.
No, they do. They understand us. It's just about how do we communicate with them.
Exactly. So what I discovered for myself was I don't want you to understand me. I want you to relate to me. If you could use your imagination, that furthers the conversation, because if I try to understand you, I'm only listening to what I understand and I'm throwing away everything else that you're talking about. But if I can articulate it to a way that you can use your imagination, and what would you do in that situation? Now you can look in your life and figure out, oh yeah, I would probably do this or that. Well, yeah. So now you can relate to me, and this is what I did with what I had, but man, we feel that those conversations will help, and he's proven it. He's 88 years old right now. He's been doing this for 60 years, and he wants us to leave this to some veterans like myself, so we can carry it on when he passes away.
Absolutely.
So I've been with him learning that and learning those principles, because with what I learned from the personal development courses and then learning from him, it's like, man, the schools don't teach how to be self-reliant. They don't teach self-discovery.
Hey, again, that's just, soak that knowledge up, spread the word, teach me, Obi-Wan.
For real, that's how it is.
That's it.
How it is. So that veteran suicide piece, because between that and the sickle cell trait, those two conversations keep me above ground, because when my mind goes to, I don't feel like doing this, or my body is in pain, because I live in a pain 7. So it's like there's days that I'm like, nobody cares. What are you doing? And just lay in the bed and
get up.
So those conversations remind me that I have to get out of bed and take some kind of action. But I do need support, and I do need help. And
hey, we're get ready.
Yep, get ready.
Get ready.
I'm ready. The conversation's there, man. I'm ready.
Get ready. Get your elevator pitch done. You may only have 5 minutes.
I got it. I could do it.
Right. All right, bro. I believe in you, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with Farron Dozier, his inspirational story, and his nonprofit. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
I'll call you later today, and
okay.
we'll create a plan. Okay. Yeah. For everybody else, we are going to go on a music break. And when we come off of that music break, we're going to be hitting the tribute to the troops. So stay with us. Don't go away. You're listening to the show that highlights the programs out there beyond the VA. You're listening to the morning show right here on MBR.
This is an MBR moment of heroism.
Sir, I don't know how to tell the story.
Well, you got to, Joe. You tell the American people what these men did here. You tell them how my troopers died.
Military Broadcast Radio, Tribute to the Troops, is honored to salute the men and women of the Space Force's 2nd Space Warning Squadron at Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado, who operate the space-based infrared system satellites. On the night of January 7, 2020, they provided the critical early warning to our troops at Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq. This original report from Nathan Strout with C4ISR Net. Reported, on the night of January 7, 2020, Americans were shocked to learn that Iran had launched more than a dozen ballistic missiles at U.S. and coalition forces in Iraq. Iran called it fierce revenge for the assassination of General Soleimani. As reports of the attack inundated the airwaves, viewers were left wondering what had happened, and perhaps most importantly, were there casualties. The barrage damaged runways, tents, equipment, and a helicopter, and the Pentagon acknowledged that 110 people needed to be treated later for traumatic brain injuries. No one was killed. The remaining U.S. and coalition forces that had not been evacuated were able to take cover in bunkers thanks to what President Donald Trump referred to at the time as an early warning system. The public now knows that many in the national security community suspected that early warning system was the space-based infrared system, a constellation of satellites that surveils Earth's surface 24/7 to detect missiles. Rarely has the Defense Department offered such a high-profile example of the system's capabilities and its direct impact on the American war fighter. This is the story of the people, the men and the women of the Space Force 2nd Space Warning Squadron at Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado, who operated this space-based infrared system satellites that night and provided the critical early warning to seek cover. The role for the 2nd Space Warning Squadron began in October when the squadron took over operations of the nation's premier missile warning satellites. Tensions increased exponentially after the U.S. assassinated Soleimani in a January 3rd drone strike. The second that he was killed, within that frame of time that he was killed, we were talking about what possible responses might Iran take. I think in a way our mind was on this threat from the get-go, said Davenport. Coordinating with the intelligence community and colleagues within the Department of Defense, Reed and the other mission management operators put together a collection strategy for space-based infrared system satellites, ensuring that the satellite sensors were best positioned for optimal coverage of the region. We have an ability to sort or tailor how we collect things, and I just remember going through that mission and planning and trying to come up with that collection strategy, said First Lieutenant Christiana Castaneda, a fellow mission management operator. In discussions with other agencies and our intelligence analysts, we were able to come up with a strategy to collect on whatever the potential retaliation could be. Built by Lockheed Martin with infrared sensors from Northrop Grumman, the space-based infrared system satellites constellation is made up of 6 satellites, 4 geosynchronous satellites, and 2 hosted payloads hitching rides by highly elliptical orbits to provide polar coverage. By detecting infrared light created during the launch of ballistic missiles, the sensors allow the operators to see every missile launch taking place around the world. The Government Accountability Office said in 2019 the system cost roughly $20 billion. This system is a passive collector, Davenport said, and it really does. That's all it does is collect infrared photons. That's what it was built to do. Then our mission team interprets those infrared collects. There was no flashing red light or siren that went off in Colorado when the attack began, just days after Soleimani's death. If anything, the detection of the threat was fairly mundane. The satellite sensors picked up the infrared flare of the Iranian missiles just like they would for a space launch, but they're sensitive enough that operators can see what threat class of missile they're dealing with and where it's heading. With the indications that we received, we knew immediately that this was the threat that we were potentially waiting for, said Mission Commander First Lieutenant Mariano Long. That night, it came out of nowhere. It was a lot of missiles, quick, and we could see where they were trying to impact, said Long. We knew literally people that were serving alongside us were being targeted. Our goal is always to try to be as correct as possible, like we always do, but most importantly, getting that message out fast. When we see multiples, we definitely have heightened alertness. The Space Force declined to reveal exactly how long it took from detection to getting the warning out, citing the sensitive nature of the capabilities involved. After the call, the 2nd Space Warning Squadron was in the same place as everyone else, waiting to hear if the team's warning was successful, and nerve-wrackingly, whether anyone had died. Meanwhile, the team watched news reports about what was happening overseas. There was some time in between, and we were like, okay, are we done? Is this the end? Said Reed. We were all still pretty much on pins and needles. In the days that followed, the 2nd Space Warning Squadron learned that its warning had indeed been successful. The base had been partially evacuated earlier in the day following an intelligence report predicting an attack during a 3-hour window that night, but many warfighters stayed behind to operate and secure the airfields. For those that remained, the 2nd Space Warning Squadron warning was critical. One recollection from an official Air Force report on the attack highlighted the importance of that early warning. Throughout the night, performing patrols, checking on the team's welfare at Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq, around 1 a.m., we heard the first announcement of incoming, incoming, incoming over the radio and quickly ran back to our MATV for protection. As we closed the door, there was a large explosion and the first impact of a missile struck only 100 meters away from our position. We could feel the blast and continued to hear missiles hitting other locations on base as they lit up the night sky with every impact. Others recalled diving into bunkers at the base and alerted the warning range out across the base. The missiles damaged equipment and infrastructure. The people treated for traumatic brain injuries numbered 110, but again, no lives were lost. The involvement of the space-based infrared system satellites and the 2nd Space Warning Squadron was confirmed last September when Space Force Chief of Space Operations General John J. Raymond credited Reed and Castaneda by name for saving American lives. They operated the world's best missile warning capabilities, and they did outstanding work, and I am very, very proud of them. Ultimately, the officers who spoke to C4IS RNet about their experience credited the enlisted Guardians for the success of the 2nd SWS. There are about 25 Guardians working on the floor, the vast majority of whom were enlisted. It's the young Guardians who are doing the work, said Davenport. I don't think most people understand the crux of this mission is done by the airmen, by the enlisted, added Long. I really want to attribute all the success we had that night to our airmen that do essentially the nitty-gritty of the job. If it wasn't for them that night, we would not have had the success we did. While the January 7th situation was unique in its profile and consequences, Burt emphasized that it represents just a snapshot of the work the 2nd Space Warning Squadron does every day. Military Broadcast Radio salutes those warriors of the 2nd Space Warning Squadron, those behind-the-scenes airmen and Guardians that dedicate their lives to saving others. We salute you and honor each of you. You are appreciated. Honor and respect, 2nd Space Warning Squadron.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. 10. Ground control to Major Tom. 8, 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. This is
It's the guts and it's the glory. 100 stripes, 100 stories. It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July. It's them handwritten letters from home. It's them sleepless nights alone. It's his newborn baby he left with his wife. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's a line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Hey. From the fields of Indiana to the swamps of Louisiana, to the golden coast of California, Uncle Sam's the only family he's got. His purple heartbeat won't stop. And his 18th birthday was the day he was born. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's the line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, stand on the front line.
All right, and we are back, and we are getting ready to do our next. You're listening to the morning show here on MBR, and last thing we're gonna do is it is that time. It is 3-minute warning.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition. Strap in.
It's the 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. What we learned today. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
All right, so I haven't put that sponsor thing in yet. Okay, so John, what did you learn today? Because I learned a lot.
So sickle cell is something that impacts the sickle cell trait impacts almost 300 million people worldwide.
And they might not even know themselves.
And they don't even know they have it. They don't even know they have it. So I bet you the number's even higher. Like if you think of some of these other areas of the world that don't have as much information, don't have as much technology, don't have the medical care, don't have the basics to sustain themselves, but they still function and operate, but yet they could have this trait and not even know it. So that to me was very eye-opening to me today. Truly enjoyed our talk with Farron Dozier. And it's, again, I think we need to help this man out and help his cause out and help bring more publicity to this so we can help with this fight. And help with this mission. I don't even know
if I have it. Like literally, when I get done with this, I think I'm going to call the VA. And,
say I want to be tested for sickle cell.
Yeah, I'm going to have. Not only am I going to do that, but we have somebody that's like kind of a guest on our nonprofit board, and I'm sure she's going to listen to this, and it's going to raise some eyebrows.
Absolutely.
I never even heard about it until he came on. So I'm glad that I don't want to say this is kind of like breaking news, but I didn't know about it.
I had heard of sickle cell, but then just understanding the large number of people that it impacts, and I'll guarantee you the number is even higher because people don't know. I'll guarantee it. The number's higher. And especially in the military. How many times, you know as well as I do, how many times has somebody gone down after we've done something rough? Think of the 12-mile road march. People like done, just done.
True story.
Oh, they're dehydrated. They're dehydrated.
True story. Well, and so, and the thing that I learned today, I learned more information about, like I think I'm going to have my wife read it to me for a bedtime story. I learned more about Cap today.
Joseph Kapowitsky.
Yeah, I learned more about him today. So I really appreciate that knowledge that you gave me today.
Yeah,
well,
man.
ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. We're getting ready to head out. That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast is free.